Hi, I'm Cher Kaufmann. I'm international artist and author of the Artful Mandala coloring book and the Ancient Alchemy coloring book. And today we're going to do something that's kind of based on the drawings that we did in Mandalas and More on the Meditative Drawing lessons 1 through 3. And I'm going to throw in a little lesson that's not actually in the book. This is a little bonus thing that I've done in some of my private classes that I thought you might enjoy to do. So we're going to work on that today. But before I do that, I do want to announce I've got a 5-part series, new books that are coming out. Joy and Gratitude. These are so cute and just adorable, and you've got to check them out because I love them. But there's a 5-part series. These are just 2 of them right now, Joy and Gratitude. Okay, there's my personal little plug, and now we'll move on. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to show you a little something that I have actually a little personal love of. So if you've been following me for any length of time, you know that one of the things that I really like to have people do is explore their world, is to be aware of the things that are around them. And I happen to be a person that loves to watch clouds. I love the way they change. I love the way that they capture colors. I love the way that they can literally feel like they're breathing as they move through the landscape. And they're just magnificent. Not only from culture to culture do they change in their design, but also just based on location of what the environment supports. So this is something that is very, it's got sort of a mystical element to it, and clouds have actually been known to be associated with enlightenment, in that they are the closest to heaven that an entity can get is by floating through the clouds. And so there's a lot of mystery around clouds, and they bring shade when you need it. Anyway, I could just go on and on. I just love the mystery and the effervescence of clouds. They're just amazing. So what I'm about to show you today is a few examples, and I'm going to emphasize a few because I know that there are some really creative type people that are going to be just running with this and create all kinds of amazing different kinds of clouds. But I wanted just to show you a few different ways that you can begin to play with drawing clouds, and some of them are going to be a little bit maybe reminiscent of what you did as a child, and that's okay too, because at least you're starting to become aware of the shapes in your own sky and bringing them into your paper here. But I really want you to just see if you can maybe try these and add them to your own personal style and see what happens. See what happens like clouds. See if they begin to change and expand. So one of the things that I really like about the clouds in a lot of Asian artwork is that they have this sort of swirly, curvy type of design that's built into them. And I happen to be a person that's in love with that kind of design, that more organic look. So I'm drawn to that. But what's really nice about these is that they're not just singular lines that we're going to be working with, it's parallel lines. And parallel lines means that you have to be aware of the space between your initial line and your second line, and that they are fairly consistent. And so this is going to be about the technicality of your consistency of your line. So if you have not watched the Meditative Drawing of Lesson 1, please go back and watch that, because that's very important, how to work with your pen. Lesson 2 is going to teach you a lot about confident lines, which is what we're going to be working with here. And Lesson 3 is actually playing with curvature lines. And so all of these things lead up to what we're going to be doing today. So I really want you to have those bases before we begin to play here, but certainly you can just jump in here if you'd like. So one of the things is that you're going to remember that you're going to do your ABCs, you're going to adjust your paper. Mine is at an angle. I'm going to take a deep breath, which feels so good, and I hope that you also do the deep breath as well. And then we're going to connect. And when I begin to connect, there's something that begins to soften within me as I allow my pen to follow my intention of what I want to do with creating these clouds. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create this curvature line. And I'm going to begin to move in a way that has these sort of light, fluffy things that begin to happen. And I am, for this one, going to create a double-ended curve. So it's got a little swirl or a little bit of a spiral action to this. Now I am going to take a look at this, and this is going to be important for you that are new into drawing. When I'm looking at the end here, I want to look at what is my intention over here. Do I want to do my outline that I'm about to draw on the outside or on the inside? Because that will make a difference on what side of this line that I begin my starting position. And I would like to do mine on the outside. So I'm going to make sure that I go on the outside here, and I am not going to race through this. Now I am going to have to change my paper And you'll notice that my lines are not going to be perfect, and that is really important, that I feel that you don't worry about that. It's the consistency of the space that you want to be a little bit more aware of. And I'm just going to follow like an outline. This one went a little wide, but we're going to use that to our advantage and just create a curve right on in. And I'm going to connect it all the way back in here. So this is going to be the very beginning of my cloud. Now I'm going to create the bottom. And so the bottom I'm going to create, I think, a little bit of a dip there. And I'm going to follow it all the way around. And that's going to be my cloud number 1. Now, one of the things with the clouds, and there are very different clouds. There are some that have a lot of, say, wispy tails that move off of the clouds. That's a slightly different type of cloud, and you're more than welcome to practice those. You can Google those. They have amazing clouds. If you Google Chinese clouds, there's all different kinds. It's just wonderful what they have in tapestry and in stonework. But I'm going to do this type of cloud on kind of a repeated basis with just a little bit of variation. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to imagine that my next cloud is underneath this one, which means that I'm going to have it where my pen is going to need to lift off the paper. I'm not going to draw over my cloud that's already existing. So I'm going to imagine that as if there was already some cloud over here, and I'm going to move over this way. And I'm going to create my spiral over here, and I'm going to create my spiral over here. And I'm going to follow this way this time instead of starting with my spiral. And the outside here. And this one here, I'm going to do a smaller and a bigger. Okay, now the one thing I'm going to add a little bit on my next one is a little bit of kind of a wisp. It's an impression. It gives you the idea that there's a little bit of a wisp going, but because we are working with confident lines, it's just more about that it's the movement itself, not necessarily that my line is going to be, if you watched lesson 2, we talked about the difference between a confident line and one that does like a slash mark where you're moving very quickly. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the idea of my confident line, but I'm going to do it like this. And I'm going to connect this way, and I'm going to make that more of a slightly closed line at the very end of it rather than keeping them open like my other lines are here. And I'm going to do a curvature here at the top. And I'm going to do 2 little things here. And this one, because I want to make it a little bit smaller, I'm actually going to do my outline on the inside. And the reason why is that if I did it on the outside, I'd be taking my line almost to the end of this, and then I don't give that any way to kind of continue its way out. So I'm going to leave that on the inside to make it a little bit smaller so that that is my exit, my last line before the little wisp begins to move out. So now I'm going to do it on this side, and I'm going to do it this way. This is employing the same type of curvature line that we learned in lesson 3. And I'm going to do a little bit of these little spirally little lines here. And I'm going to do on the inside. And that's just a choice that I'm making on this one here. And a little bit of a rounded area here. Okay, so this is just one of the examples that you can use for clouds. And I'm going to show you a different way where it's using just single lines rather than these double lines with the double terminated little spirals at the end of it here. But this is certainly a way that will get you started, and it's really fun to color or fill with patterns at this point if you want to do something along those lines, because it gives you a basis to play with. Okay, so now on this next one, we're going to use a single line but very similar pattern with the little swirlies here. And so I'm going to start here with a swirl, and I'm going to begin to do my motion where I create these little puffy things and a little swirl on this end here. And I'm going to create a puff this way. Okay. And then for something different here, I'm going to do a little swirl here, and I might make these a little different shape. I might take this from here. Now, what's nice about every time that I create, remember we were talking about, if you've been watching some of the other meditative drawing lessons, you'll notice that I've talked about divots before, and divots are usually the space that I mean on the outside of a line. So it'd be this space over here that I might add something whimsical to, but in this case, I'm going to actually use the point of the divot to my advantage in that it allows me to create something off of that line that's already beginning to point down. So here I could actually use this as my starting point to add another little swirl, or I could use one of these here to create another little swirl. I could use this one up here to create another little swirl because the line is already existing, and so it allows me to have that jump off point to adding something very small, but it will change the outlook of what something looks like. Now the other thing that you can do is you can have clouds sometimes have like it's like a horizon line built into the cloud itself. And so one thing you can do is actually use your straight line technique and just draw a straight line. Now a straight line means a straight line in this case. If you want to do a curve, that's going to change how it looks a little bit. But so in this case, I want you to just practice a straight line. And here you're going to just practice doing your little puff spots. And you'll notice as I'm drawing that I'm kind of stopping between each one and drawing them individually. I'm not necessarily going zoop, 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 zoop. I'm actually stopping between each one. It allows me to rotate my paper just slightly enough that my wrist is having a better relationship with that next line. I have a better contact with that next line. Now, this does not necessarily mean that this feels like it's a perfect shape, but it is the beginning of something that I could really create something magnificent out of. And if I want to do something that makes it look like it's a little bit farther away, then I might make it just something a little bit smaller. I'm going to extend that line just a little bit here. So this is a few of the things that you can play with. Now I'm going to give you a little sneak peek. I do have a coloring video, and you are more than welcome to go check it out. I'm going to show you some different examples of what you can do with color with these types of playful designs. So for example, these types of designs that have the double parallel lines, there's lots of places to use color within the lines, but also to use in that pointed end of the divot to allow for color to smooth through. And also with these here, there's lots of room for play in pattern, but also with color to imply shade, shadow, and sunrise, sunset, that type of thing. So I'll give you a sneak peek of what you can what we're going to play with, things that we're going to play with in the other video, just so that you can see an example of just using just a very little bit of hint of color and different ways that I show in the next video. So, thank you for joining me today for a little lesson that's not in my Mandalas and More book, but is in some of my private classes that I teach for just something that's a little bit fun. And I hope you'll join me in my coloring video that shows how you can use color in everything that you learned today. I'm Cher Kaufmann from the Drawing Desk. May you find more inspiration in your day.